Hello, all my fantastic fanatics. This is your man, Dr. Usher, coming at you live with another fantastic word of encouragement. And today, I have a special guest with me, a man that needs no introduction. But because you may not know him, I'm going to allow him to introduce himself right now.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Bryan Boyd, native here to Jacksonville, Florida. Also in the field of engineering and ministry as well. So,
engineering and ministry. And in today's topic, we're going to talk about how you can achieve financial stability in your 20s. Because how old are you, man?
25.
This brother's 25 years old. 25, I tell you. Are you married?
Not married.
You got kids?
No kids.
Are you gay?
Nope.
The boy ain't married. He ain't got no kids, and he ain't gay. And by the way, do you own your own house?
I do.
This man is 25 years old. Not married. No kids. He ain't gay. If y'all gay, y'all looking at him, I know y'all see these muscles. He don't flow that way. So that door says exit only, do not enter. So don't even go there. So anyway, he has his own house. And what's your degree in, young man?
IT management.
IT management. Now, how many years did you go study for that degree?
4 years.
Where'd you go?
FSCJ.
FSCJ.
Locally.
So you are a local boy, local yokel. And you grew up in this town, went to school in this town. Mm-hmm. So you're not like the other brothers. They take their money and they go. You actually stayed in Duval.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question, man.
Okay.
As you was getting ready to... Well, before I'm not going to answer the question just yet. I want you to tell everybody, because some people might be thinking, he looks like one of them bougie Negroes, that, he come from that people with money background. Okay, man, tell everybody your background. Just you ain't got to go in detail, but just let everybody know where you from.
Grew up in the inner city.
The inner city. Not the outer city. He's an innie.
The hood.
What part of the hood, might I ask?
North side, Jacksonville. Most people think the worst side of town.
North side.
In some opinions, of course.
All right, and tell us a little bit about your family upbringing, man.
So, family upbringing, of course. I came up single mother home. I got a lot of siblings. Well, I had stepfather too as well, but it's a total of 7 of us. They grew up there. I'm the oldest of all of those kids.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. And so for me, my whole thing coming up was that, with me being the oldest, I had to be the responsible one. I couldn't be the one, playing around. I couldn't be the one making all these bad mistakes and stuff like that. I had to set the example. And I think that's why I ended up more or less on this path.
This dude has the smoothest voice. If y'all listen to the podcast, the dude looks as good as his voice sounds. I'm just saying. And he's single, ladies. Now, so I'm not going to go into that route. I was about to take this show to a whole nother level. Well, this is not how to find a mate. This is how to achieve financial stability.
Right.
So, what made you go into... Okay, most brothers that come from the north side, they don't go to school, according to statistics. What pushed you, or what motivated you, or what drove you to go get an education?
If I got to be honest, it was my family, my mother, my grandmother, and my uncle. Yep. Yeah, because one of the things that they always value was education, and they realized that, that was the way to get the life that you wanted to get. Not necessarily sports, not necessarily things that other.
Because you athletic, right?
Yeah, I lift air 9 then.
I see that. Look at them guns. My ashy elbows. Never mind.
But that's how we came up, knowing that knowledge is power, power is opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And so when you was in college, you got your degree, and I'm assuming with anybody that goes to college, how did you pay for your college?
Scholarships. Pell Grant, that's it.
Yep, scholarships
Literally,
and Pell Grants.
I was getting money back every semester because I stayed at a community college.
So you were smart. You didn't go into like a multi-million-dollar debt, and yeah, because most black people, because of what we've been taught, we forget that there are other ways to go to college other than getting $100,000 in student loans. And so let's move on a little bit further. So you graduate
Right.
with a degree in IT, and what was your, I guess, employment opportunities like when you graduated college?
Oh, it opened the door. Like if there was like hinges on the door, it like blew the hinges literally, because it's so funny because what happened was, and I guess my college career is a little more, I guess, say unique compared to other people, because I had a portfolio. So I started building mobile apps maybe sophomore year. So I started building like mobile apps and stuff like sophomore year of college, and I started like posting these out on like LinkedIn, all these professional networks. I had them on the Play Store and all at the time. So
Wow.
at that point, I started getting like job offers from recruiters and stuff well before, and I even got one from Google, like 3-4 months before I graduated, asking me she was gonna snatch me right out of college.
Wow. So what made you not work for Google?
Well, for that, I would have had to relocate, so I would have had to go to California.
Oh, you didn't want to go to California?
Nah, not at the time.
You want to stay here?
And I wanted to get out of school and stuff like
Right.
that, kind of get a feel for it. And I always said that once I hit maybe 27, 30 years old, I would decide whether or not I was going to take that next.
Wow. So you graduated college, you got your first job. Are you still with that first job?
Yeah.
How long you been with that job?
3 years.
You've been with that job in 3 years. Now, you said you bought a house.
Right.
How did that come about?
Well, that's something I always wanted. 17 years old, I was like, I literally, so this part of my life planned out at 17.
Wow.
Like,
Hold up. You heard what he just said. He planned it out at 17 years old. This brother, at 17 years old, is already thinking, I'm going to buy me a house.
Yeah.
Wow, dude. That's deep. That's deep. So walk me through that. How did that come to be?
Just whatever. I realized what I want, because like I said, growing up where I grew up, I was the nerdy kid at all. So people would kind of
Big as you is, you was a nerdy girl.
Yeah,
nerdy dude. What?
Everything.
What? Dude, please, man.
Anime, comics, sci-fi, program, all of that stuff. That was me.
You know what? Let me. I'm gonna touch on that, because a lot of you guys who are watching this podcast, listen to this podcast, or watching the stream, a lot of you guys know my story. How I grew up in a small country town. I wasn't the smartest kid in school. I was kind of nerdy too, because I'm like him. I was into computers. I was into all that techno stuff. And when I when I dropped out of high school, started following Jesus and went to college, the people who loved me were my friends. Y'all still my friends today. But there are a lot of people that made fun of me. They mocked me. They said, "How you going to make it?" They always thought I was nerdy. And they always poked fun at me because I wasn't as cool as they were, because I didn't really care about the Jordans. I didn't care about all the fancy shoes and the fancy clothes. Plus, my mom and daddy couldn't afford them.
Yeah.
So,
I'm here too.
Yeah. So all we had was technology. Technology was cheap. You just go to the edge of the corner, there's some broken electronics, and you just pick them up and fix it. Or take it apart. And that's how I did it. But, it's strange how in the black community, and I don't know, I can't speak for the white community because I'm not white. I'm going to speak about the black community. It's funny how when black men want to pursue a certain career or a certain path in life, there are other brothers that'll try to make them feel bad, bully them, mock them, put them down.
Yeah.
And that's foolishness.
It's a real thing.
Because here's the deal. The same person you're mocking right now, you're probably going to end up working for them. Because now I own 2 companies and a nonprofit organization, and I'm looking for people to hire. And I'm going to tell you one thing. If you messed me over when I was younger, don't think I'm going to hire you for one of my companies. I'm just going to be real. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Mine!
Oh, man.
Mine! Well, anyway, man. So So walk us through. How did you? Okay, how could you afford? How old were you when you bought your house?
Last year, 24.
You was 24. This
24.
dude was 24 years
Yeah.
old, bought a house. How in the world did you even qualify for a house?
Well, see, I'm gonna give a lot of that direction to the Lord. I gotta give.
Okay, you're gonna give it to Jesus. All right.
Spiritual, whatever.
Go ahead.
But what happened was, the thing is, when you come out, I always had good credit, so that's the first thing I didn't do.
Hold on, repeat that.
I had really good credit.
He had good credit.
It was in the 7. At the time I got my house, it was the 780s. And then it dipped a little bit after I got the home.
I know, right? If y'all don't know how the game works, if you got bad credit and you get a house, it's just gonna get worse. We had good credit. I'm like you. I was like high 700s too. And as soon as I got that house, man,
it just plummeted.
And I'm like, I ain't even paid the first mortgage yet, and these jokers got me late. I'm like, nah, I ain't never been late. Don't get it twisted. But it's just how the system works. And I think a lot of black people that are trying to get houses, they don't understand, because I got a relative that struggled with trying to get a house, and I got a lot of friends that struggle with getting a house, and I really can't advise them on how to get a house, because like you said, it's the Lord, and it's like, if you do what you're supposed to do financially, you stay out of debt, and if you get into debt, you pay your bills, and if you can't pay your bills, then you shouldn't be getting in debt. But one of the things, I don't know if they ever told you, when you was going for your mortgage, did they do that debt ratio on you, where they wanted to see what your debts was versus what your income was?
Yeah, they did all of that. So
Yeah.
pull bank statements and everything.
Yep, that's what they did me. They wanted 6 months bank statements. So we're sharing this with you so you guys understand that, getting a home is not out of your reach. It's just you got to make sure that you got your ducks in a row. Because the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is, if you got credit card debt, you need to pay it off.
Get rid of it.
Get rid of it. I keep telling people, you don't need credit card debt as an individual. Now, if you have a business that's a C Corp or S Corp, yeah, I'm cool with that. But if you a personal person with a personal credit card, we both say get rid of it. So get rid of your credit card debt. And then I would say, well, what would you tell me to do after getting rid of credit card debt?
After that, you got to work consistently. Because most places, they want 2 years on a consistent whatever. And that's actually why, even though I had better opportunities, I didn't leave my first job. And then everything just kind of worked out there, like promotion-wise and all.
And it's strange, because that reminds me of something, and I'm not going to lie. It seems like that 2-year job requirement hinders a lot of black people from getting homes. Because I remember when I first tried to get my first home, I was in the same field, but I was in different jobs. And it's weird that even though I was in the same field back in them days, oh no, you only been on this job for 6 months, you gotta wait another 2 years. But I'm gonna give this one to Trump, because your boy, y'all, I know a lot of y'all don't like Trump, but your boy removed some of those regulations where you didn't have to have that 2-year same job employment, the same company requirement. He made it to where if you were in 2 years within the same field, whether you were self-employed, see, Trump made it easy if you were self-employed to get a house. And so I say that because, right now, the biggest hindrance to you getting a house is the policies that are being passed in the White House. So you got to get proactive if you want to get a house, to make sure that they're not passing policies that hinder your economic stability and your economic growth. Because, politics is what's going to make you or break you. But I don't want to talk about politics, because we're talking about economic stability. But that's a part of it. So once you stay on your job for 2 years, then what did you do?
After that, started reaching out, starting to talk to different realtors, seeing like where my income bracket was, and then I made sure that whatever the maximum was, I went down at least 35%, because I wanted to make sure that I could afford the home that I was buying.
Because sometimes they'll give you more than they'll say you can afford like a $500,000 house, knowing that that's a setup. And so you got to be wise enough to see that when you're buying your home in your 20s, that all because they say you can qualify for it,
Doesn't
don't
mean that you
mean
need it.
Yeah, exactly, because it's a setup. Because once you screw up your house, your credit on a home mortgage, boy, you can pretty much scrap that for 13 years.
Yeah.
You don't want to screw up a home mortgage. That's just, you're in the dirt for the rest of your life on that one. So you got so you said you went to different realtors. How many mortgage companies did you go through?
Mortgage, I only went through one actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Dang. Because I went to like 3 or 4 of them jokers, man. 'Cause one of them was, and there's a lot of racism in the game because, a lot of these mortgage companies, they can't legally discriminate against you, but they can make it more difficult for you to get qualified through one of their loans. I'll tell you about an experience that I had. I went to go see a well-known lending company here, that has the title of a company that's from another nation. And I went to see these guys, and of course, I had my little beat-up Honda Pilot, raggedy truck, and I wore, regular clothes, and I had the income, I had whatever I needed to prove that I, could get the home. But because I didn't look the part, they made it more difficult for me. They asked for more than 6 months of, pay stubs and 6 months of bank statements. They wanted more stuff. They wanted a letter from the organization I worked for. They wanted a letter from my employer. Oh my God, they wanted credit references. These jokers wanted everything. And then I went to go see a builder mortgage. And there's a friend of mine that's probably watching this broadcast. He's a realtor here in town. And we went to go see this one property on San Pablo Road. And, this is one of those properties that the builder is the financer and all that stuff. And as soon as we stepped out the truck as minorities, he got into my realtor's face and then literally pushed my realtor off the property and told us to get out, leave, called us bushwhackers and everything. This is in, 2018, I believe. So this ain't like a long time ago. This is recent, how this crap was going on. And then I went out to another property off of Mayport Road. They were building a new community out there, went out there. There was a house that I saw on the corner. Of course, the builder wants to finance, right? And, me and my wife rode up, dressed normal, my hoopty. Didn't look like I had a lot of money. And that's how I roll. I don't care about being rich. And I told the lady, I qualify for this amount of money, but I don't want to use this amount. And I think I want to get that house in the corner. The house had a specific price that was below what I could qualify for. And I knew I could get it. And she told me, she's like, well, we got a house coming up in phase 2 that's going to be in the back, and you could qualify for that one if you want. I said, but I want this one. She said, well, if you get this one, we want you to use our lender. And if you use our lender, and then she started giving me the same bullcrap about how I need to give 6 months of bank statements, 6 months of pay stubs, and letters of references, and letters from my employer. I mean, she was asking for all kinds of crazy stuff. And I remember, man, I was angry. I was angry. And then I went to go see one of my friends who's a pastor's wife, and I told her about my experience, and my friend said, hey, what that lady did was against the law. Where if you, listen up, people, if you're trying to get a house that's in a visible part of the community, like this house is in the front of the community, if they try to push you to another house that's further in the back, that's against the law. I forgot the name of it, but you need to be careful when they do stuff like that. Now, you humming like something happened to you like that. Did they do you like that?
No, I'm just surprised.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, that stuff's against the law, man. You can't be doing that. And so I'm encouraging every person that's listening, if you're a minority and they try to push you into the back of the community, or if you're a young person, you might be white, but you might be a young white person, and they try to push you in the back of the community, that could be age discrimination right there. Because they're not allowed to not sell you the property that you want and try to push you or encourage you to get something that's further in the back so you're not visible, and that's just wrong. So, but I don't want to take up the time because the reason why I brought you on the show is to talk about, now that you qualify for this house, you got your house, you're going to take over. You're going to tell everybody how they can achieve economic stability in their 20s. It's all you.
So the first thing it starts with And it's funny because I travel this thing and I know a lot of people, it starts with finding something that you like to do. Mm-hmm. Whether that's traditional college or whether that's just a trade. Mm-hmm. And most people don't realize if I could go back, I would probably pick technology again. Yeah. But I will be enticed to go to trade school, whether that's welding, merchant seaman, or whatever, because it's a lot less, I guess you say, leeway. So what took me 4 years to get in a degree, I could have got probably the year in the certification. I could have been on my way having a subcontract.
I know, right? But y'all hearing what he's saying, though, right? You don't necessarily have to go to college. No. Right now, getting that sub-S or subcontractor degree or that paperwork, that type of job is more money.
Yeah.
Right out the gate.
And I mean, even looking at the pandemic, like when everything shut down, that was the business that took off. Plumbing, electrician.
Everybody need their stuff fixed. We all in the house breaking it.
If you an HVAC person in Florida, you got
yeah. I do network installs, and I get a lot of calls from other companies to do network installs because I'm going to be honest, there are a lot of young people out there, and let me tell you something, he's a Gen Z. So there are a lot of millennials and Generation X's out there that ain't worth the crap. You know, millennials, they're still waiting for older people to tell them what to do. No, not millennials, sorry. Gen Xers are still waiting for older people to tell them what to do. So they're sitting around waiting for instructions because Gen Xers are lost because we are so used to the older generation telling us what to do that now here we are old people. We're in our 50s, we're our 50s now, and we're still waiting for old people to tell us what to do. So if you're doing that, you're not smart. And then we got the Gen Xers that think they're God's gift to earth. You know, they got the degrees, they cliquish, they stay to their own group, they think they're the only ones in the world, and they don't like to work. And then we got the Gen Z, guys like him in their 20s. They're smart, they like to work, and they like making that money. And the big difference that I'm seeing is that if you are in the field of technology, like I am, a lot of the companies won't even call a company that's owned by a millennial or a Gen Xer because they know that they're not going to do the job to the standard. They'll call, what they call a pre-Gen Xer, like my group. I'm not Gen X. I'm before Gen X. So I don't know what I am. I'm kind of in the lost generation. And they'll call a Gen Z because we got our hustle on. We know how to hustle. And so I agree with Bryan when he says, going into a tech field, getting your technical degree or trade school, that would be better if you want to make that money in the long term and control it. But it always goes back to politics too, people, because what's the point of you being self-employed and making all that money if the administration is going to charge you 28 to 38% in taxes? That's not fair to you because, they always say this stuff about tax the rich. Mm-hmm. But let's be smart. Me and Bryan are both smart people. If we both own companies and they raise our taxes, Bryan, what would you do to your products?
Raise the prices.
You heard? So now y'all wondering, why the gas prices going up? Why the food prices going up? Why housing prices going up? It's all correlated to taxes. Oh, it's supply and demand. No, fool. Somebody got in the office and started raising taxes. And guess what happens when you raise taxes? Rich ain't going to pay for them taxes. You are. So that's why it goes back to the other topic again about economics and politics. You're not going to achieve financial stability in your 20s if you're not engaged in politics and making sure your politicians aren't trying to screw you on the backside. Tax the rich. Well, what if the rich person is you? I mean, you're the one that want to be rich, right? Nobody wants to be. Do you want to be poor?
No.
I grew up poor. I didn't like it. I like having money. And I don't like paying taxes. But, you got to pay your fair share. Listen, people. Nobody that you know that's a politician pays their fair share in taxes. I ain't gonna give no names, but y'all know who he is in the White House with his vice president. They do not pay their fair share in taxes. Think about it. These people take your tax dollars, and you got to remember, that's how they get paid. They get paid through your tax dollars. So when they raise your taxes, guess what happens to their salary? It goes up. Now, they got the best health insurance, and you stuck with Medicaid and Medicare because they won't pass laws to make sure you get the same health care that they got. Now, your boy Obama, now I can mention his name because he's not president, but there was a time where he wanted everybody to get the same health care that he got. But that went down the pipes because of politics. We got sidetracked with all this, BLM and all this stuff. And while we fighting BLM, they passing all these regulations and rules to hinder black economic growth. And so, this is going to get into the next portion of our conversation. Unless you got a comment you want to make. I know. He's new to the game, so I don't want him to say too much because, I don't want his boss calling like, hey, dude, you're fired. I saw you on that show. You want to keep him in his job. But the next thing is, building black economic wealth in the black community. Now, Bryan, what would you say is the biggest hindrance, to black economic growth? I would ask Bryan.
That's a loaded question.
It's like a baked potato.
I guess at the core of it, though,
don't be afraid to tell the truth.
The mindset.
The mindset. Explain, brother. Explain.
Because I think what's so unique about our community outside of other communities is the prioritization or the monopoly that people put on either sports, entertainment, rapping, and the likes. So that's the biggest boundary. And I think it's because that our people aren't necessarily pushed towards other fields or values and stuff like that. Because I didn't know about trade schools after I graduated.
Me neither. The same thing. I'm 50 years old. I'm like, trade school.
And if I didn't grow up with a love for technology, I would have never gotten to STEM. So what I'm saying, we there, and then going to school, the push was to go to college, but it was never to what did you pick up in college. And like I said, and all of that comes back to the mindset, because if you put somebody in a box and all they know is that box, that's how they're gonna live.
Wow.
But when you show people outside of the box, if the box happens to break in one of those corners and now they see this open world, they're going to be led to go outside of the box into the world.
And I think that's what our goal is as young black men. I'm an older generation black man. He's a younger generation black man. And I think that's what our goal is to try to let black people see what's outside that box. Let them see that we are in an economic system and an educational system that, I'm going to say, I don't have my teleprompter on, so I'm liable to say something that's going to make him mad. But I'm going to talk about the educational system. We're in an educational system where young black men are at a disadvantage. Why do I say that? Because unless a young black man has athletic abilities or he's of a sexual orientation that's not heterosexual, he won't be given a chance. So you got to think about the fact that we have an educational system that puts at a disadvantage the way a black man thinks. Because a lot of us, when we go to school, our schools are run down. I remember when I was living in St. Louis, I went to a rundown school, pipes breaking everywhere, raggedy, roach-infested school. This is in the 70s, people. And then I go to a school in a small town in Kentucky that's behind a graveyard. Now, can you imagine a young kid in elementary school having to walk through a graveyard just to get to school every day? And the thing that plays with your psyche, See, we got to get to the point to where once we get out the hood, we got to get into positions of influence, not just within the hood, but within the industry, whether it be music industry, technology industry, whatever industry, and let these young black men see that, hey, there's nothing wrong with you. Because, you know, in the black community, there's this belief that in the education system, the young black men are trouble. You know, they don't graduate, they got low education, low IQ, you know, most of them can't read, can't write, they have learning disabilities, they haven't been dealt with, they've just been passed on until they graduate, and then they end up in prison. And the reason why that happens is because we have an education system that just doesn't care. Their goal is to push the kids through, get their paycheck, and go on with their lives without thinking that, hey, you're screwing up a black man's life. Or they're bringing these groups that teach these ideologies that are destructive to the black community. Because he grew up without a father in the home. Well, his biological father, I would assume, right? You say he has a stepfather. Mm-hmm. But look at all the black families since the 1960s that have come and gone without a black male in the home. And you wonder why there's a large portion of delinquency, crime, dropouts, pregnancies going on in the black community. And it's funny. A certain political party will tell you that, hey, it's, you know, we're all about the family. It takes a village to raise a child. No, it takes a mom and dad to raise a child. You see how they got it twisted? They got us thinking that, oh, Sister Sally and Uncle and Uncle Bill and everybody else is going to raise this child. Well, what about the daddy? And this is where economic policies play a part in helping the black community grow. We got to get to the point to where the black community recognize that certain political candidates and parties are not necessarily trying to help them. These parties are just there to propagate the situation so they can stay in power. Individuals in power. Because think about it, there's one lady that's in office right now that's been in office since I was a teenager. The same person. In office, same position, since I was a teenager. And you got to ask yourself, why? Because she managed to learn how to keep her district in a position of need rather than growth. And this, man, I don't want to talk too much because I want to get in trouble. But I'm going to tell you this. If you're a certain political party, I want you to go through your district and see the condition of your district. And I want you to ask yourself, what is that person doing to help your district or your community? Because I will tell you this, if you live in a certain political district, you may not have good roads, you may not have plumbing, you still may be on septic tanks, you still might have rundown schools, you still may have low property values and all the junk. It's like the place where nobody wants to live, high crime and everything. But if you go to a different, can I be real? Okay, I'm gonna be real. If you live, man, I'm gonna get in trouble.
Here we go.
Here we go. But I gotta say it, because he grew up in a hood like that, and I grew up in a hood like that. We both grew up in Democratic-ran neighborhoods, did we not? Northside's Democratic, and my neighborhood where I came from was Democratic. And they were the worst communities to live in. No opportunities, no good schools, high crime, drugs, delinquency, rundown buildings, everything. But then I got my white friends that live in Republican areas. Nice houses, nice libraries, roads are maintained, the grass is cut. I got this saying, if you want to check whether or not a community is worth living in, look at the grass. Not just the yards where people live, but look at where the city runs the grass. You know, there's a part where they got the road, and then there's the road, the yardage beside the road. See if that yard is maintained. See if that roadage is maintained. See if the median is maintained. Everywhere that I've noticed, in even our city here in Jacksonville, where it's Republican controlled, the yards the medians, the trees are trimmed, everything looks nice. But as soon as you cross over into the Democratic district, they got smells. I mean, dude, I went into a Democratic district, dude, and I almost died of a headache because they released some type of chemical in the air, and it's like at 5 o'clock every afternoon, y'all. This part of the city stinks. I don't know what they put in the air, man. It just stinks. And then we also know that in these areas too, they built houses on top of ash pits. Now, again, black people got to recognize that it's not wrong to vote Democrat. It's not wrong to vote Republican. What I'm asking you to do is, you got to vote for someone that's got the common sense and the business sense to understand how to manage and get your community growing again, and not just keep the same cycle of poverty happening. You know, I mean, but I'm older. He's younger. So you're 25. Maybe, Bryan, you can explain from your perspective without being political if you don't want to. So it's up to you. What are your thoughts on this?
Ooh.
I know, I always put Bryan in the middle of it. I know. I'm sorry, man.
Ooh.
I'm sorry.
Ooh. I don't know what to say.
Well,
I don't know what to say.
you grew up in a black neighborhood, right?
I did.
Okay, you grew up in a black neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was your school well maintained?
No, not really.
Uh-huh. And what year did you graduate high school, man?
14.
2014. He graduates high school. What about your neighborhood? Was the streets maintained real well, or how often did the street sweeper come by?
No, they were actually pretty decent.
Oh, okay, the street sweepers came by because them brothers held it down. That's what I'm talking about. Because brothers run that street machine, boy. They look. If you got black men that are in charge of the sanitation department, brothers are cleaning up that mess as long as they're getting their paycheck. You don't pay them, they won't show up. But yeah, they keep it clean. What about the gang and the drugs and the violence? How was that? What was that situation like?
Well, it was the north side.
Okay, see, but you said north side. But explain what that means.
It was
what?
I don't think it's as bad as the media puts it out there to be, but it was still nevertheless.
Yeah, it was
pretty
tough.
rough. Yeah,
it was pretty rough. So, as we are talking about economic independence and stability, mostly economic stability, is there anything, as we get ready to close, is there anything as a young black man? Now, I know you're young. You don't know everything, but you know a lot to be 25 years old. You know more than most millennials know, that's for sure. Is there anything you want to share with the audience? Anything that you think would help them?
Ooh. More than anything, understanding that at the core of it, your life kind of starts with you. Now, while you are subject to laws and politics and things of that nature, and that has a very huge factor on our lives, right? People sometimes they dwell too much into that, so they think that all of their problems is because of the world around them, and it's not their immediate situation.
Right.
And that's where a lot of people even my age still kind of in that phase of thinking that it's the world and it's not them. So understanding that for the most part, your future is in your hands, that you can have a successful life. And then by the time where all of these other factors come in, you'll already be established and you'll be in a place where you can actually do something about the stuff that's going on. But you can't do anything about the stuff outside of the box until you get out the box.
You got to get out that box. So I think if you learn anything today, if you get anything out of this today, if you are a young minority, you got to get out the box. Do whatever it takes to get out the box. And out the box means out of your hood, out of your mindset. One of the things that got me out the box was actually hanging around white people. I got around white people, and I saw how they argued. I can say this out loud because Steve and Jane Goodman, though that was the first white family that I actually had a good. I was 18, 19 when I first met them, and there was a white family, and I was in their home almost all the time. And I saw when they argued how different they argued. It wasn't like black folk argue like you know how we can get, boy. It was nothing like that. And I was like, that's so weird.
Really?
It was weird, man. They were real chill when they was fighting. It's like, well, I disagree. Well, dear, and they were just having this little banter, and and I'm like, and one of the children was like, oh, they're having an argument. I'm like, that's an argument? Huh. And I'm like, dude.
That's something.
I need a white woman. Because I don't want to get, sisters one. They'll go, let me tell you something. I ain't going to. And I'm like, okay, sorry, baby. But I'm not saying all white people are like that, I'm just saying I was blessed or lucky or whatever it was to be around Steve and Jane Goodman for a very significant portion of my young adulthood, where I got to learn how they lived. And they wasn't very rich people. I mean, Steve was I think, a construction worker or something like that, and Jane helped out at the church from time to time. And, we was always hanging out, eating up their food, but just the way they lived their life. And they didn't live in the richest neighborhood in town, but the way they carried themselves was very impactful to me, because I'm like, I had a mentality of white people as being a certain way. And then when I got out that box and I got to see how they really were, it was totally different. And then, then I went to a white church. Black church, you know how it is. You go to church starts at 11, and you may get out at 3 o'clock if the pastor runs out of breath. Don't laugh. We're not talking about a certain pastor. We know we're not talking about you, sir. We love you. You're not like that, right? Don't laugh. I know somebody like, oh man, darn that, Raffy. No, sir, we're not talking about you. We're talking about the other church down the street. But one of the first things I recall about being in a white church, and my first experience in a white church wasn't their church. It was a Assemblies of God church, and they would start service at 11:30. And no, 11 o'clock. No, yeah, maybe 10:30 or 11 o'clock. I can't remember. I believe it was 11 o'clock, and they would be out at 12:30 on the dot. They would have a praise and worship, shouting session, because the Assemblies of God is Pentecostal, white folk Pentecostal. They would shout, speak in tongues, have a good whole hootenanny time. But at 12:30, you was at the restaurant eating, and I thought that was so weird. And I tried to go back to the black church. And it was just hard, man, because once you go to a white church that does all that in their time period, 1 hour and 30 minutes, and then you go to a black church at 3 hours and 4 hour church services. I'm glad I got out the box, because I didn't know that church could be like that. I didn't know. And so I think Bryan is right. We have to get out the box and see what the world is like. And maybe you're a white person and you think your church is dead, because there's some white folk that, that I hang around. They never had a black friend in their life until they met me. And maybe you need to step out of your box and get to know black communities a little bit better. I think that I'll say this story, and then I'll let you have your 2 cents, and then I'll go. I had this young lady friend who always knew how to correct black people where we were going wrong. Well, if black people would just get themselves a job, quit having babies, and get to work, and quit spending their money on those fancy cars, because everybody on welfare got Cadillacs. They actually thought that welfare folk had Cadillacs. I know, right? That's a common misperception that many white people have about black people on welfare. Oh, they got a nicer car than I got. Oh, look at the food they're buying at the store. They can afford steak and stuff. I don't know about y'all, man, but when I was on food stamps, man, I could not afford no steak. It was not a lot of money. They give you enough to survive, but not enough to thrive. But what I did was, with this young lady, I got tired of her hearing complaining about, how black people did, black people that. I said, have you ever been in the hood? She's like, nope. I said, well, let's go. We're going to go to Washington Heights. Oh. Yeah, buddy. If you don't know, if you ain't been to Jacksonville, you don't know Washington Heights. That's the hood of the hood. And I took her to Washington Heights, and we went to go do an outreach program with a brother in the Lord. And I said, look around this place. You see Cadillac? let's go inside the house and talk to some of the moms and dads. I said, do they look like they got the best furniture and stuff in the world? After my friend saw the conditions of those people living in those projects, her next question is, why do they live like that, Raph? Why don't they just move? Oh, and that's when I had to let her see outside the box. Where are they going to go? They can't afford to live anywhere else. Because, remember, they grew up in a school where the teacher passed them on. They grew up in homes without fathers. They didn't understand that they had to take responsibility for their life because no one ever taught them to do that. And so all they knew to do is, this is what they know. This is all they can get. And they can't get a car because maybe they got a felony or too many driving accidents or something like that. We don't know. There's always a situation with these young black families. And we always blame the individual. In some aspect, yes, because it takes two to make a baby. But when you grow up in a system that has music that glorifies sexual promiscuity, and they glorify drugs and gangbanging, and what do you expect them to do? And when I shared all that with her, she understood. Her mind opened a little bit. I never heard her mention another comment about the black people ever again after that. But on a final note, when you're thinking about the things that impact the black community and the black mindset, is there any other group of people, ethnic group in the world, that listens to music where they call themselves itches? I'm not going to say the B word, but the B word with an itch, whores, and ninjas, and not ninjas, but with the GGER. Is there any other group in the world that listens to music that degrades themselves like that?
No.
It's just us.
No.
It's just us. And I ask myself every day, why do we always listen? Why do we listen to it? Call the radio station and make them turn it off, people, because it's screwing up our communities and our mindsets. Because if I grow up thinking, oh, I'm going to cap this Negro, or that's that B over there, and I'm going to do all this stuff to her, and then she's going to have my baby, and I'm going to walk out and I'll pay child support. If you hear that every day, you end up doing it. So I encourage people to get outside the box, even with your music. Anything you want to close with, my brother?
Yeah, you pretty much covered it.
I know, man. This show can get kind of intense. But you might, if you want to say something, now's the time.
Nah, it was just a pleasure being on, and that was, like I said, it's an interesting perspective. Even the last story in particular, like that's like the culture barriers and stuff that we have, and that's something that I kind of experienced in college a little bit too, because there were people that, even though of course I stayed locally, different ethnicities. So we had Asian, we had Hispanic people, we had white people, and just even seeing like their cultures and stuff changed my perspective, because everybody has, I guess, say, an image of how they're reflected in the media, but you don't get to see the actual story.
Exactly. Till you get out that box. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, nobody called into today's show, and if you did, my phone didn't ring. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Usher and my man, Bryan Boyd. If you want to check more of his stuff out, what website do they need to go to?
TheGroundedPodcast.com.
Check out thegroundedpodcast.com. He also has a book out.
Titled Grounded.
Grounded.
You can also get on thegroundedpodcast.com.
Yep. Is it on Amazon yet?
Yeah.
It's on Amazon. Just type in his name in Amazon, find his book. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, remember, do as much good as you can while you can. This is Dr. Usher saying, I'm out, and I'll see y'all later.
Good night.
See you. Bye.